impossible for me to address the answers. Okay. So please be fast, but also follow rules. When I tell you to put the answers in the chat, only then do it. I'm not going to be entertaining answers that come before or after the stipulated time. But before we get into any of that, I'm also going to be releasing the motion for the prepared round for the middle category here on the call. If your teammates aren't here, if you know friends who are participating and aren't on the call, please let them know that motion release happens today, end of session. So for middle category, so be prepared for that. And the second thing is that I will be sharing the schedule for the qualifiers day with you, as in what it's going to look like and what the timings are going to be like. So those are two important updates that everybody might be interested in. Please get your peers to join the call if you know any who should be here. Okay, 54 people so far. I'll wait till 6:40 for everybody to come in, and then I'll start with the session.
Hi, Kamal, Nitiksha.
Hi, we're waiting for people to join in. I've briefed them about what we're going to do today.
Sure, perfect. Let's go, Nitiksha.
All right, let's start. Please lower your hands. If you have any questions at the get-go, I'll just answer them if I see them in the chat. Ma'am, I didn't attend the past two classes. I was outside. You'll have recordings. I've already shared that. Uh,
And Varnika, just speak to the ugly number. This is not the forum to do it. Just type two ugly ones, right?
no evidence cards are not required. Like I said, you can have notes for reference on the palm card on a sheet of paper. We're flexible with that. Can't turn on camera, Tiara. Okay, you're an exception if the internet isn't just like working fine. All right, with that, we'll start. So basically, like I said, today is a practice session. All of us will participate and through the chat. So please maintain the decorum by following the rules specified earlier in the session. Okay. So I formally welcome you all to day 3 of Frankenstein training. And we are directly going to get into the debating, or like I'll share the motion with you on which we're supposed to do some brainstorming together. But before that, why don't you have a look at your schedule? So basically, it starts from 2:45 p.m. onwards. So log in as in there's going to be roll call and you're supposed to be there present with your team so that we can so that we are assured that you are here and willing, I mean, and available for the rounds. And debaters briefings happen as in we tell you in brief what this format is going to be like, what the format is like, the speaker roles. We repeat everything for once for everybody's reference, just so that there are no last minute slippages. And then 3:30 p.m. onwards, we start with the first prepared round, prepared for every category, right? Because your emotions will be with you when that happens, this round happens. So prepared round for everybody starts at 3:30, ends at 4:30 tops. After that, you will have a break for 30 minutes. And then the next round happens from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Again, prepared but flipped stance, which means that if you were going for in round one, you'll be going against in round two. If you were going against in round one, you'll be going for in round two. After that, again, you have a break of 30 minutes, and then from 6:30 to 7:30, your prep time will start. From 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m., roughly at around 6:15, although this is subject to change based on how we're running, how on schedule we are that day. Please be aware that the motion release for middle and senior category will happen between 6 p.m. and 6:30. So be closer to your devices, be on the Zoom call when we need you to be, because impromptu motion will be released between in this time. Obviously, only then can you break for prep, right? So please be on the Zoom call when we need you to be on the Zoom call for motion release and clarifications. No clarifications can be sought after 3 to 4 minutes of motion release, maximum 5. Okay. The last round then begins at 7:30 after 1 hour of prep time for both middle and senior categories. 7:30 p.m. is when the third round happens. And it's going to be impromptu mostly. Okay. Now let's talk about the practice motion that we have. I have a motion on the screen and everybody can have a good look at it. This house supports eco-terrorism in developing countries. Can anyone guess what eco-terrorism means in the chat, please? If you were to answer in one word, maximum 5. Anyone heard of it? Senior category at least. Deforestation. Okay, Clavia, good guess, but off the mark still. Destruction of environment. Yeah, but what is the end goal? What is the end goal of eco-terrorism? Terrorism which attacks the eco. Okay, very convenient. Vandalism, yes, Ishan, that's very, very close to what it means. But vandalism towards what end? Deliberate environmental damage, yes. But what is the end goal? End goal is economic development? No. See, end goal makes the difference here. Okay, it is a guess, but what I think is that ecotourism may be harming the habitat, environment, and ecosystem. Okay, Darsh. I think all of you are confused, are unclear on eco-terrorism only on one, like based on one slight clarification. What if I told you that eco-terrorism is actually practiced by people who really deeply care about the environment? Can you now think about it? I mean, it's a very fascinating concept. That's why I'm not giving you the answer right off the bat. Eco-terrorism is not practiced by people who don't care about the environment, which is what most of you are thinking. Most of you are thinking deforestation, industrialization are all acts of eco-terrorism, but they're not. This is pollution. This is creating environmental damage. Yes, environmental damage for economic profit is not eco-terrorism. Eco-terrorism is actually practiced by environmentalists or people who care for the environment. Sit back, think about what I'm saying, and then answer. Protest, okay, good. I have some relevant words coming in now. Environmentalist protest. Vandalism done in name of environmental protection, okay. intimidate or to coerce governments. Okay, now we're making sense. Yes, this is what eco-terrorism is about. All right, eco-terrorism refers to the use of violence so that people get to know about the environment through this like act of attention seeking. So basically terrorism perpetuated on the surroundings, on property, vandalism, so as to garner attention and use that attention to create awareness. Environmentalists, not all but some, practice it. How many of you understand that? Give me a thumbs up. More. I have 66 people in the room. Won't proceed if we don't have at least 40 of you confirming. Okay, fair enough. So basically, this is eco-terrorism. And now developing countries, all of us know, right? Developing countries are countries which are not, which have not actualized their economic potential. They're still in the process of becoming economically well off, becoming developed like the West. So we are still in the process of becoming countries which have low level of poverty and all of those things. So eco-terrorism in developing countries is what this motion is about. The slide very clearly mentions that prop is supposed to support eco-terrorism in developing countries and op is supposed to oppose eco-terrorism in developing countries. And the terms that you have to define are eco-terrorism and developing countries. Forget argument formation for now. Let's do this quick exercise of how to do the setup, especially for speakers from every team. Please be vigilant. I will highly recommend that you participate in this exercise. How will you define eco-terrorism in this context in such a way that it does not repeat what I already said about eco-terrorism? I gave you the dictionary definition. Dictionary definition is that it's an act of violent conduct towards the environment, towards property and other things, so that environmentalists can garner attention and use that to create awareness. You can't use this definition because it's dictionary definition. What do you make of eco-terrorism beyond a point? If your proposition, how will you define eco-terrorism? And how is it different from how you will define eco-terrorism on opposition? Can somebody write a good answer on that? I'll give you 2 minutes. How will your definition of eco-terrorism on prop differ from your definition of eco-terrorism on op, if at all? And if it will not differ according to you, you can say that as well and tell me why you think it will not differ. Also give me reasons. So like, for example, like Lavya, you're saying eco-terrorism is a way to enhance the biodiversity. Tell me how. Like give a little bit of explanation. That's why I'm giving you 2 minutes. Please use the time. 6:48 right now till 6:50. Write a proper response because of the different perspectives. Yeah, but what are those perspectives? How will you define eco-terrorism on prop and how will you define eco-terrorism on op? Is it the same way that you're going to define it or is it different? Why or why not? Eco-terrorism is an act of violence which is committed in support of environmental causes. That is a dictionary definition. Okay, let me give you an example of going beyond a dictionary definition. If I am proposition, I have to support eco-terrorism. This means that I have to make eco-terrorism look good. In order to make eco-terrorism look good, I will define it as actions that are done to garner attention. This means that these are obviously this is some violent activity, but this violent activity does not have any victim at the receiving end. So I am saying that eco-terrorism can be violent, but it does not kill people or it does not cause irreversible damage. Why am I making this definition? Because this definition will help me prove that eco-terrorism is not so bad after all. Can you manipulate the word eco-terrorism in your favor on prop is all I'm saying. How can you make eco-terrorism look good? That's my question. How will you define it in a good light? Eco-terrorism, even though it sounds something very violent, okay, I think this was good. Let me just scroll and see. Um, Something very violent. It is actually not. Eco-terrorism is a protest by the citizens of the country who care about the environment and need to take these violent measures to get the attention of the government. Okay, good. So basically, Bharat, if that's how you pronounce your name, is creating a sense of urgency. He's saying that we need people to listen, government to listen, and this will not happen in the absence of violence. Although you are not directly saying it, you have to directly say it. So if there is an emergency and nobody is listening to you, then yes, you have to do this attention seeking activity, perpetuate violence, and you can't be blamed for it because your end goal is that you want the environment to get better. I think I somehow, some to some extent agree with Bharat's argument, although it could be more explicitly mentioned, your agenda. Eco-terrorism is a way of the use of extreme or radical tactics with the intention of drawing attention to urgent environmental issues and catalyzing change in developing countries. Okay, sure. But why is that good? What is good about eco-terrorism? Tell me that. Like, how will you prove that eco-terrorism is good? How is violence justified in any case? So, like Bharat tried to do it so far, and I buy that to some extent. Can you find more reasons? Eco-terrorism is a way to protect the environment through protests and other violent acts for noble reasons to attract people's attention. Okay, but okay, everybody is saying that, hey, this is noble because it attracts people attention. But if you start doing something really bad just because it gets you attention for a good cause, is that justified? Is it justified if I, let's say I want people to end animal cruelty, okay? So should I start beating up dogs so that that generates empathy in people? Is that the right way? Obviously, I am beating dogs or I am putting them under physical torture because I think that invokes empathy in people. No matter how bad a person is, that person will, I think, some to some extent, their heart will melt when they see a dog being beaten up brutally. But does that justify what I'm doing? No, right? Every kind of attention seeking is not good attention seeking. So how do you justify it? We identify eco-terrorism as means of gaining attention towards the environment as people and people in power are not understanding the fact that we need to save our environment and time is running out, hence gaining attention of people in power through this way. Very good. I think this is very close to the right argument. Devangshi, that's a good effort. To get recognized, we need to use terrorism to get attention from the government. Okay, all right. Eco-terrorism is a way environmental activists fight for the better of the environment in ways, but these activists help the environment by shutting down companies that are harming the environment. Yes, this may include violence, but it doesn't cause damage and deaths. Yes, good. That makes sense. We support eco-terrorism. We support eco-terrorism as only when the voices catches the attention of the authorities will make the people understand the importance of protecting the nature. Okay, now there are repeat claims, but these are valid claims. Yes, this is what you can say. How will you define eco-terrorism as bad or not now? Okay, do a little bit of negative framing. How will you make it look bad? Okay, Afreen Mohammed, very good framing. People, you can refer to her framing, or if you want to see what good framing looks like. So basically, what is being said here is that eco-terrorism is a necessary measure to create awareness on pressing global issues the consequences of which could be greater than that of any destruction. This is a very good comparison. So basically, what Afreen is saying is that the environment is already under attack. It is going to anyway degrade. We are creating this slight spectacle of violence so that that larger destruction does not happen. So how are you justifying violence here? You're saying that violence is happening anyway. Everybody is perpetuating violence. Let's make it obvious. Because right now, all of us are exploiting the environment, but our naked eye cannot tell us that we're doing it because it's so implicit and subtle. Let's not let it stay subtle. Let's make it more jarring. Let's make it more problematic by actually explicitly being violent. So I think this is a very, very good framing, the kind of framing even I do, like senior debaters would do. Violence is never the answer to problems. Okay, now we're going up. Though these actions are good are for a good cause, eco-terrorism is an antisocial element of society. There are many other peaceful methods which are as effective. Okay, and today we have seen nothing good come out of eco-terrorism. Is it right to cause more damage just to? Okay, good. Yeah, fair points made. So basically, there are alternatives. Attention seeking can happen through alternative ways. Why are you so desperate let's say, cause violence? Also, this counters Afreen's point, right? If you know that the environment is already so treated violently, why do you want to add to that violence? Any amount of violence added to the environment is detrimental. You shouldn't want to do that, right? Okay. I'm going through everybody's response to see if there's something new. Okay, violence isn't ethically right. Jay, that's a good claim. Eco-terrorism is a violent act which includes vandalism and protest which can hurt or harm one. It creates chaos, damage, and heavy protests. Eklavya, very good framing for what eco-terrorism can look like. This is framing. This is setup. First speaker. Okay. There are alternatives, better methods. Okay. Eco-terrorism may look as noble to one's eye, but by being an eco-terrorist, the damage done to the environment exponentially increases as well. Ahan, yes, that's a point that somebody else also made early on. Um, okay, now we are moving towards arguments. Unknowingly, all of you have started giving me arguments. We moved away from defining eco-terrorism. All right. I think so far we understand. What does the world look like? How would you do that setup for this debate? What does the world look like in which this debate is happening? Remember, I explained this to you yesterday. First speakers are supposed to explain what the world looks like. Do a little bit of framing. I'll take 2 to 3 responses on what the world looks like. I'll give you an example if this is tough. So basically, I can say that the world looks like a place wherein environmental degradation has reached its zenith, its peak. And from now here on, there's only one way down, right? You're going to completely rupture any harmonious coexistence that was possible among people and like their ecosystem and bio, like everything is at risk. This is what the world looks like right now. It's so desperate that we can't wait anymore for people to naturally change their minds or have a change of heart. We need to do something very, very startling. And that's why eco-terrorism is justified. How will you design what your world looks like on op? Okay, Ishan, no, this is very simple, right? Where you say this is a world where violence is the only way to save the environment. Opposition will ask you, why do you think violence is the only way to save the environment in this world? So you have to do more explanation than that. I get what you're saying, but you have to explain why you think violence is the only option left. We believe that opposition's world looks like a barren land where de-initializing short-term development plans for comparatively longer and unnecessary development plans have only reduced the agency of the world as a whole to stop these environmental plans in the first place. Okay, convincing. All right, so I think you have some idea of how status quo is done. Who are the stakeholders? And which one is the most important for you? In our world, we damage the environment every day. Eco-terrorism is not just something. Okay. Environmental damage has reached to such an extent that eco-terrorism is the only option. Okay, okay. Now focus on stakeholders. How is revenue a stakeholder? Humankind and the environment. Okay, broad. No, these are broad stakeholders, Enjor, if that's how you pronounce your name. Why don't you narrow it down? People are also not similar. Do you think you are similar to an American living in the same world, having the same environmental problems, having the same issue of global warming? Do you think a woman has the same kind of struggles as a man? Do you think children understand environment just as profoundly as adults do? So citizens, just saying that people in general are stakeholders is slightly simplistic. You understand that people are also different. So you have to mention the most vulnerable stakeholders and who you're trying to protect. Habitat cannot be a stakeholder. Ecosystem cannot be stakeholder. People in the ecosystem are stakeholders. Government can be a stakeholder, good. Local communities can be stakeholders, very good. Uh, how is no agriculturalists aren't primary stakeholders. They are very very far like fetched stakeholders. Future generation can be your major stakeholder, good. Yeah, you can say such a thing. Minorities of various backgrounds can be your stakeholders, excellent. People in developing countries, environmentalists, precisely, yes, Sanvi, these can be your stakeholders. Social activists, I don't know why they would be stakeholders. You're probably trying to say environmentalists. Okay. People favoring violence are stakeholders. That's a good identification, yes. Good, basically bifurcation. Oil companies, maybe, okay. Secondary stakeholders, not primary. Low income people, good. Um, Poor people, yes. The poor and the underdeveloped, okay. But how are they related to eco terrorism? Are you trying to say that when eco-terrorism happens, there's road blockades and whatnot, and there's some sort of a disruption? The main people, the major, like the ones who suffer the most immediately because of these things are the people who are wage earners. If you disrupt the market, if you disrupt peace in the society, what happens? I'm not able to go to get my wage for a day's work because my work was disrupted. So I am the one who economically suffers and starts to think of environmental duty as a burden because I'm poor. And now these protests are happening, and I'm also unable to make money for my family to put food on the table for my family. So yes, good. Don't write too long answers. It will be very difficult for me. It's let's act violence. Act in the life of the common man is needlessly disrupted. Yes, good. I mean, you're making the point that I just finished making, Avani. Avani, that's a good analysis. Uh, Police, okay, police can be stakeholders, but secondary employees, how? Victims, yes, victims are stakeholders, but you have to define who the victims are. Why are tribes main stakeholders here? I don't quite understand. Businesses are who are disrupted are the least of our concern. You've already made so much money with that business that you're running. You're creating environmental degradation. Why should I care about any financial setback that your business is undergoing? Because there's more pressing issues for me to address. People who are working hard for their jobs. Yes. Okay. All right. No, Neil, this is exactly the kind of thing that I discourage. Now you've put in your question 5 times, like response 5 times for me to give it visibility. Victims are the people who are facing the violence. Yes, okay. Now we're going to stop. We're going to stop. That's it. I think enough discussion on setup. Good engagement as well. Thank you for that. Let's look at potential arguments. Okay. Now, I don't want you to analyze your arguments. Just put 3 to 4 arguments or think about 2 to 3 arguments on prop and op, and in one message, put the arguments in bullet points like this. Look at my arguments. No explanation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't copy the argument. Just see the format. So like this, prop and op, 2 arguments on prop that you will run and 2 arguments on op. I'll give you 5 minutes for this because thinking about arguments can take time. So maybe 3 to 4 arguments on prop and 3 to 4 on op. Let's start discussing it about around 7, 8. Okay, no, this is not going to work. Wait, people who are entering the responses, very, very lengthy arguments. I can't work on lengthy arguments. I'm sorry. It's very, it's some eye strain also, right? Like, because the chat box is very, very small in the on the interface. But yes, like the way Vachi has done it. Please do it like that. Small, pithy arguments and numbered. So refer to Vachi's last message on the chat, and that's how I want you to do it if you want acknowledgement. I can't read paragraphs, I'm sorry. Ishan, Vachi, yes, these arguments work. One minute to go. Okay, let's discuss. Okay, so Ansh Naidu's arguments on op. How short-term development in developing countries is a prerequisite to environmental development. That I didn't understand. Ignorance of economically weaker and minority people, especially in developing countries. How is this related to eco-terrorism? That I don't understand. How proposition has reduced agency for environmental goodwill. Yes, good. This I understand. The third argument is good. So basically, what is being said in this argument is that, from what I understand, is that proposition has reduced agency, as in when you practice eco-terrorism, not all people agree with violent activity, right? So maybe they will dissociate from the movement, and when they dissociate from the movement, the goodwill that the movement had garnered will now be lost. So that's a really good argument on op. On prop, the argument is this prioritizes. Okay, it's very difficult to scroll here. Give me 1 second. Hi, is somebody, Devika, are you on the call?
Yeah, Ritik, sure. Yep.
I just need somebody to scroll and read from the chat because it's just constantly, it's not scrolling for me.
Just a second. Let me just, sure. You want the last message? You want from the start?
Yeah, we can start from the last one. We'll take 5 responses backwards. And then I'll
Okay.
scroll.
So Prateek Jain, 10th grade, prop. Don't spam, please. Eco-terrorism, ensure that action is taken for the environment. That's first point. Second, ensure that common man thinks upon the environment crisis. Uh, should I give it off, or you want to talk about first two?
No, prop is fine. Yeah. So basically, common man learns about the problem. This argument is good. The only thing you will have to prove in this is why is the common person not going to understand through any other language but violence, right? Why is violence so convincing to the common man, and why is everything else not convincing? Maybe you can talk about how even media houses only cover very sensational things these days, right? Even they want to make money, which means that if you want something to get to the people, the only way of doing it is to make it sensational. Yeah, we can go to the arguments now.
Okay, just a second. Uh, from the same Pratik Jain, the op ignites fear. When these minor violence acts are done regularly, they compound and cause a lot of destruction.
Okay, that's a fair argument as well. I mean, if you're saying that minor acts of vandalism will eventually become bigger acts of violence, but you will have to prove by environmentalists who care so much about the environment will make these big acts of violence. Like, why will I harm that one thing that I've been working for all my life if I'm an environmentalist? Why will I go beyond, let's say, one act of eco-terrorism is recently what happened in France. Somebody threw paint on Mona Lisa's the original painting from for like as far as I know. That is an act of eco-terrorism. But that's just a painting you threw paint on. What is to say that these environmentalists will tomorrow kill somebody who does not care about the environment? Like, why would I do something so offensive when I am actually a part of a social movement, right? That's something you need to prove. If you can prove that, you can take this. Yes, next.
Okay, let me look at the.
You can just
Avni,
randomly pick some arguments. I think we will randomly pick because that's the only way of doing it, guys. There's a lot of.
sure. So Avni, 11th grade. So she sort of, I'm going to the prop, encourages government action, take advantage of media essentialism to spread the message, inspires other to do the same.
Okay, I think I agree with most of the points above because they've also been made by others. But I don't understand why you think of violence as an inspirational force. If you want to prove that, you need to analyze more, which I told you not to do in chat, so it's fair. But if you have to analyze it, you will have to explain why violence is inspirational. I mean, violence is not supposed to be aspirational, right? Like somebody, when they're violent, it shouldn't like be carried forward. Are you trying to say that the messaging that they're going to do will eventually get people to work towards the environment? So is it motivational in that way? Because if you're saying that violence itself as an activity will be motivational and other people will start doing it, then you're actually proving your side wrong, because you're proving that eventually everybody will start practicing violence and justify it in the name of achieving their end. Yes, next, please.
Okay. Then the same Avni, the main polluters aren't harmed like oil companies. The main polluters aren't harmed like oil companies, set a bad precedence. Other can utilize violence for other causes. Common man is harm, destruction of property.
Yes, basically you're making a practical argument and a principal argument. In the practical argument, you're saying both of them work actually. So in the practical argument, she's saying that, look, you're causing active damage, which means that there is already existing damage, and then you're causing damage over and above that. And then you expect the government to listen to you because you think you care about the environment. How is that fair? If you cared, you would find alternatives. If you cared, you wouldn't actively cause harm to the environment thinking that you're doing the right thing. So maybe you're not true environmentalist. Maybe you're not leading by example. That's a good argument to make. It's a principal argument. It's an ethical issue that you are looking at then. The other argument is, I'm sorry, this was a practical argument where you said that there is material harm. The principal argument is that it is principally unfair for you to do this, right? Like, why, how is this justified? Because what if other movements which think they are right start practicing violence as well? What if the feminist movement tomorrow says that, okay, we are going to now take law in our hands because we don't trust the state police because they're all patriarchal? And what if feminist vigilantism starts to happen? Will you be appreciative of that? Who will account for the lack of law and order that ensues or follows? All right. So that, yes, next, please.
Okay. This is Vachi Agarwal.
Right.
So Small violence can save bigger destructions. Minor violence is an effective way to generate awareness by garnering attention from government.
Okay, yeah, that's repeat argument. I think we can skip repeat arguments. If you find repeat arguments, you can skip them by default now. This is not to discount any of your arguments, Vachi, good arguments, but because we've already looked at them, I don't have any further feedback to give. Any new arguments? Let me also scroll and see.
I guess Tiara 9th grade, eco-terrorism conducted responsibly, ethically can hold corporation accountable for their actions.
Okay.
Eco-terrorism empower local communities to combat environmental degradation, like alternatively what choice they have.
Okay, this is a good point, but this will require a lot of setup. If you're saying that terrorism or like violence can be practiced ethically, it's almost like an oxymoron. Oxymoron is two opposite things, right? Like night and day. How can violence be ethical? Or how can you organize and strategize violence? You can. I'm not denying that you can't. I mean, there is this philosopher who has actually written a paper on it as to how you can use violence as a strategic tool, right? You can threaten sometimes people with violence so that they don't perpetuate violence on you. But you have to explain what the strategy will look like then. When I use violence strategically as the movement, what will it look like? What will it lead to? When will I know when to stop? If you are able to answer all these questions in your first speech, this argument will make a lot of sense subsequently. So yes, this is a new argument in a way. I mean, this is a new way of looking at the same argument. Yeah. I think we take 2, 3 more responses and that's the most we can do. Please don't scribble on my screen. I can see who's doing it, all right?
Okay, I'm still finding the arguments.
Yeah, even I'm finding new arguments. Okay, I want to comment on this. Okay, these are not new arguments, but I want to comment on this because this will help. This is Neil's arguments. Okay, so you're making the right arguments, but look at your arguments, Neil. And this is positive feedback for everybody, not just for Neil. This is a problem that most of us have in a speech. The first point on prop is allows people to get motivated to change their decision. Okay, people are able to move towards better choices. Okay, people are able to make the world more green. But this argument is not three different arguments. It's just one argument about people. Do you get it? It seems like I'm making three different arguments, but at the end of the day, I'm only just ever talking about people. So you need to be careful. If I'm saying that these are four different arguments, are these actually four different arguments? Or is it just the same argument said in different ways? So that's a feedback I think most of you will be helped by. And innocent people get affected. People can't pay for damage. See, again, people, which means it's the same argument. Innocent people are affected because they can't pay for the damage. And their private property is destroyed. This is all one sentence. This is not three different arguments. So maybe be attentive to that. What do you okay, is there, don't start parallel conversations on the chat. This is the most disagreeable thing that can happen on a call this big. This exercise is for speaker too, right? No, this exercise for everybody to just do some mind stretching and like think actively on about the motion. But now I think, I mean, this is the most we can do, because after this, I also want to show you the arguments that you could have potentially run. Okay. So if your arguments were not looked at, please just know that you can learn from like others' responses as well. Also, because there's a lot of repeat arguments, I think it kind of gives feedback to everybody's arguments. Look at these arguments on prop. My potential arguments were one, sensationalism and the need for it. This means that, hey, there is an emergency. Media does not cover anything that is not sensational, which means that violence is the only thing that can give you wide outreach, and you need wide outreach essentially because the environment is in a very, very bad condition. Environmentalists don't know what to do if not be violent. Okay. The second argument is discussion on devastation and its impacts. Now, look, this is very important. If a building is decaying because people leave the taps open and the water seeps into the walls or something, or if there's a lot of moisture in the building, it decays, right? There's termites that grow in it. There's like moisture just kind of ruins stuff. But this is gradual decay. That's why people don't focus on it. If you want people to focus on gradual decay, you need to do something disruptive, because people care more about the problems which are disruptive. Think about a disease. If I eat a lot of sweets in my lifetime, because whatever, I have a liking for it, then obviously I have tooth decay. Eventually it might give me bigger problems, diabetes even. But I don't care about that. I'm not alarmed by that. I let it grow, even though I am like being self-destructive. But when you realize that you have some terminal disease like cancer, people act immediately, they don't delay. This means that if you want somebody to act on a problem, you need to make it seem personal, you need to make it seem immediate, you need to make it seem disruptive. And terrorism does all of that successfully, which is why you will be able to appeal to the psyche of people and invite discussions on devastation and its impacts, because now you're actively harming the environment. And when people say, hey, why are the environmentalists acting the environment, they're literally asking the question that you actually want them to ask, right? Because you want people to care, and people will start caring when you actively damage environment, right? So maybe that. And the third one is that there is need for immediate action. The need for immediate action, again, is the same argument kind of, but then emphasizing on how nothing beyond immediate action will help. You can't say, oh, why not change people ideologically, why not run campaigns? That's not possible. It's too late for campaigns on proposition side. That's how you're going to have to set up the world. Okay. Fence sitters participation means that people who don't care about environment, who are apolitical, will also start thinking. Because if I'm a person who just doesn't care, I'm like very chill in general, I need to really be moved in order to do something about environment or anything else. And I'll be moved when I can't go to my job, when there's disruption in the society, and that disruption comes with like violent activity, etc. So even the fence sitters will participate, which is what you want. Nobody can be passive when it comes to environment. If everybody is dying of the pollution in Delhi, so nobody can just like be a free rider saying, okay, everybody else will solve the issue, I'm just here sitting on the fence. Also, self-expression for groups more prone to environmental disasters. You can make this argument, okay? This argument is about how self-expression is extremely important for people who have suffered. Imagine somebody who lives in the slums, and see, property rates are higher in areas which are safer, okay? Which are not geographically prone to earthquakes, tsunamis, bad meteorological conditions. Which means that the poor people oftentimes inhabit the part of the world which is geographically more prone. Think about the frustration. I live in an area where I'm constantly scared of there being an earthquake, there being flooding, there being other natural man-made problems. Why should I not be violent against the people who live in privileged areas because I'm so frustrated? So basically, the practice of violence is self-expression, because this violence is also indirectly being practiced on these people. So this is defensive violence. That's how you can frame it as well. How many of you understand that much? At least some of it. Give me a thumbs up. All right, all right. Okay, you can lower your hands. Now on opposition, again, it's the same kind of problems that we have discussed. There is nothing new on opposition side, so I'll just share the deck, you can read. Principal problem as to how end don't justify means, right? Tomorrow, if I start beating up all the dogs because I want people to care more about dogs, that's no justification for why I'm beating dogs, right? Like even if people are more empathetic, I've already killed a dog or two in the process, right? Kills meaningful discourse potential for discussion, as in, see, people anyway don't want to care about the environment because they think that's not my issue, that's not my concern to solve. And now by being violent, you're making people hate you even more, because nobody likes violent people, right? It's like substandard, subhuman conduct. So you are making people hate your movement even more when your movement is already hated to a very large extent, because people think, hey, what is this problem of environment? People like Donald Trump, like world leaders, for the longest time thought that climate change was not a problem, it was all made up. So in this kind of a situation, you're making the situation worse for you, because you anyway don't have enough supporters as a movement. And now you're saying that I want my, no, I want, now I'm saying that I want my movement to have even more bad publicity by me being violent. So less buy-in into the movement, bad publicity are just things that happen. Okay, I think now I'm going to do motion release for the middle category. It's a very important part of this session. Just quickly confirm middle category people. If you're listening, just give me a thumbs up so that I know I'm releasing the motion with all of you paying close attention in the call. Okay, let's do motion release for middle category. Senior category will also get some idea on what these motions look like if you're first time debaters. All right, don't be scared by the big paragraph beneath. It's for you. See, you're not expected to research, so we tell you, we decode the tough term in the motion. The motion is, this house believes that the end goal theory should be used for environmental awareness campaigns. Now obviously nobody expects you to know what end goal theory is, so I have given a definition of end goal theory and what it looks like. So Ivan Illich in his book Energy and Equity talks about the automobile industry to explain this. People tend to think that our lives have become faster and more efficient with this industry, but he conducts a research to prove that we actually spend 4 out of our 6 waking hours taking care of this automobile, or like if you have a car, a motorbike, or whatever. This time includes making money for its loan, driving it, parking it, searching for a space to park it in. End goal theory encourages one to look at things from the long term perspective when they invest in some technology. This means that I don't just suddenly give into this car, because also this can apply to different things, not just automobile. Okay, so like phones. So for example, I don't buy an iPhone 15 Pro Max for like social capital or because it makes me look fancy. I also think about the long term implications, the end goal of buying this iPhone. End goal, not just in terms of, oh, it's going to see, end goal and long term is slightly different here. When I say long term, you mean to say, okay, what if it will be so much of screen time and it will cause eye strain on my eyes, etc. End goal is, how much time will I be giving to this particular device, not just in terms of eye strain, in terms of everything I have to do for this phone, right? The kind of money I have to make, the kind of lifestyle I have to uphold, the kind of EMIs I have to come up with, all of that work. So end goal theory is more holistic. Like everything you do towards us for a certain thing is a part of the end goal theory. Okay, any doubts about the motion? Proposition will say yes. We think end goal theory is a good way of is a good theory to use in environmental awareness campaigns for people who don't know about environment. Opposition will say no, it's not a good theory. Alternatively, we can use something else, or that at least end goal theory is not good. Okay. Can you explain end goal theory in layman's terms? Eklavya, this is layman. So basically, I mean, you read the example of the automobile, you understand. Okay. Basically, how much time am I putting into something? So what is the impression you get when you buy a car? Hey, my life is better now because I have a car. Why is your life better now? Because your car will get you to places in time. And that's how you think that you're saving time. But the end goal theory says that if you look close enough, it's actually the other way around. You're wasting more time on because of the car that you own. So 4 out of 16 waking hours. This means that your 4 hours would be saved every single day if you didn't own a vehicle. This is end goal theory, where you start to look at how not something does not save your time just because the advertisement says that, but you make your own personal sort of assessment of how much of my time in my life is going to be wasted on this investment. For some people who are very rich, maybe a car is not a problem because you have a big business, other people make money for you. After a point in time, businesses make great money even without you having to work very hard. Some people can afford to give 4 hours of out of 16 waking hours because they love automobile that much. So this is about personal assessment of end goal. What am I getting out of this? How much time am I going to be spending on this? Not giving into advertisements. That's what it means. Yes, you're going to have to prep for both. This is the actual motion, Parikshit. The actual motion is, this house believes that the end goal theory on top. Can you explain how end goal theory is related to environment? So precisely because automobile industry creates pollution, right? But everybody also wants to own a car because they think that's fancy. What they don't realize is this also causes environmental pollution. So we are saying, even if you don't want to consider that this causes environmental pollution, just consider how much of your time is wasted in taking care of this car. So is this good to use in environmental awareness campaigns? Is getting people to think about every scientific investment they make good? Should we use it in environmental campaigns? That's the question. Okay. Return on investment, yes, but not in terms of money, in terms of how much time you will have to give to this particular investment or how your life will change after this investment. So people think that when I have a car, my life will change because I'll be able to get to places faster and my life will become efficient. But end goal theory says no. If you actually, and this is based on a research, okay? Evangelists did some research in the West and found out that 4 out of 16 waking hours are spent on this car once you purchase this car. So it's a waste of your time, and it's also false advertisement that it makes your life smoother. Yes, same motion, yeah. Senior will get tomorrow. Okay. All right, guys. I think that's it. Prep well, and I hope all of you do well. I'll send senior motion tomorrow at around the same time, or like earlier tomorrow for you to prepare. Okay. All the best for your tournament. This was the last training session. I hope all of you do well. Good luck.